Hey there guys, hope you're all staying healthy and creative out there. In today's video, I wanted to dive into a topic that's actually one of my favorites, software development. More specifically, what it's like during the first 6 months as a software developer. Personally, I am a junior full-stack developer at an international company that provides legal services and identity theft protection. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Caden, and today I'll be going over my own experience during the first 6 months as a software developer. Software engineering is a large field even as of right now, and I know a lot of you out there are curious about starting in the field because number one, of the possibility of remote work, but number two, it's just a good career path to have. I'm approaching the 1-year mark of being a software engineer. So I thought the 6-month milestone would be a pretty good mark to, do a touch base on. By no means am I an expert in the field, so take everything I say with a grain of salt if you'd like. I just thought that since I had been through this experience myself, I'd like to share some things that I think might be helpful. I'm just going to be talking about topics that I myself would like to know about if I was just starting off right now. Things like the impact of the COVID-19 virus, the technology that I'm using, the amount of work or what kind of work I'm actually doing. Am I required to learn, or am I learning anything along the way? Things like that. So that's what I'm going to be covering today. I want to start off talking about COVID-19 just because of the impact that it's had on pretty much the whole world. When I first started as a developer back in 2020 right here in Oklahoma, no one could have seen, especially me, no one could have seen COVID-19 coming and impact us like it did. Before COVID hit, I worked in office, like I said, here in Oklahoma. And there were other in-house developers with myself, but I would say a large portion of our developers were already working remote. I would say there were more remote developers than in-house developers, but honestly, being my first position in the field and living relatively close to the office, I didn't mind working in office. But of course, as COVID hit, anybody that was working in office then worked from home, and I still work from home today. Many people have lost their jobs because of COVID. Many people's workplaces has changed drastically because of COVID. It's an economic crisis that thankfully I have survived. If you were impacted by the virus, either health-wise or career-wise, my heart goes out to you, and I wish you the best. The one bright side about software development is that you usually can find work remote. So even during times like now, it's possible to get a job. Okay, let's talk about some tech. Okay, so I can't have a what I learned during my first 6 months as a software developer video if I didn't talk about the tech that I use. For as long as I can remember, I've always used a Windows computer. Anytime I was doing anything for fun, for work, for school, for anything, it was on a Windows computer. As you may or may not know, a large portion of the tech industry uses Apple computers. So, fittingly, when I became a developer, it was pretty much standard in my company that we were using MacBooks. So that's what I got. For me, this was obviously a huge change. Like I said, I only had really experience with Windows for the most part, and I had a little bit of experience with Linux, but really nothing to be even mentioned. However, now being used to both operating systems, I can actually say that I prefer Mac OS to Windows, and I thought I'd never say that. I wouldn't say your choice of operating system is going to make or break you in the field of software development, but just beware that if you work for a company or a business, they may require you to work with a specific set of tools. For my position, you can use any code editor you want. So I use my personal favorite, Visual Studio Code, but really there's no advantage or disadvantage that I've come across yet to use another one over that one. I've had developers that I work with that use Sublime Text Editor, Atom Text Editor, Vim. The list goes on and on. It doesn't really matter. At the company I'm at, we write in Angular for the front end and Ruby on Rails for the back end. And before starting as a professional engineer, I actually really mainly studied JavaScript over anything else. Learning something new can be intimidating, but it's always rewarding when you can get it down and put it to use. Another thing to keep in mind is that you shouldn't just learn a particular language or framework and expect to be set as a developer. And I'll actually touch on this topic a little bit more later on in the video. Throughout the field, it's common to switch technologies and switch tools because technology just changes so fast. Some other technologies I've learned since starting as a developer are Git version control and agile team management tools. More specifically, I mean GitHub and Jira. So GitHub is the Git version control. It's pretty much a standard worldwide now for working with teams is using version controlling. And Jira, if you're working with a team, it makes dividing up your work and working with other people synchronously very easy and very manageable. So if you don't know what those technologies are, definitely check those out. There's something that I've learned along the way that are just awesome. Now, we all know the workload of an engineer or developer consists of writing code and maybe even some algorithms too. But as a professional, the code you're working on actually does something. It provides value to some system somewhere. So, if possible, you should take the time to learn that whole system that your part plugs into. In my case, I actually worked for the company that I'm a developer for many years before becoming a developer for them. So I didn't actually have much to learn about the business model, which was very convenient for me. But even if your code isn't going into some customer-facing service and it's going to some piece of hardware, let's say like a vehicle or a spaceship or a tractor or something, it's still important to know that you know where your code fits into the whole system. Another important detail is working as a developer, you don't just code. Of course, if you're working with other teams of developers, inter-team communication is key. You don't want to make code that duplicates itself or even worse, entangles itself to make everybody's job harder. Now, this may seem pretty obvious on the face of things, but I was actually surprised about how much time I spend just communicating with other people. For example, you have meetings, reviews, knowledge sharing sessions, and just many conversations that don't involve code at all as a developer. This is because, and especially in larger companies, you're working with people who don't code. You're working with people who think about other factors that aren't just code. The larger the company is, the more you have to work to cohesively get things done between teams, like product teams, design, development, of course, business, research. The list can go on and on. One of my favorite parts about being a developer is that you get to learn on the job. Yeah. You heard me right. You get paid to learn. Now, for some, learning new skills for your job isn't ideal and they actually, may not want to. And there's a lot of jobs out there that you don't have to. But for people like me who like to learn just for the sake of learning, this is awesome news. To me, it's important to keep my mind fresh, I like to say. In my eyes, the worst thing you can do for yourself is refuse to learn something new or difficult just because you get put in an uncomfortable spot. Imagine if you lived your whole life like that. Unfortunately, there are many people who do live this way, specifically with their careers. They get to a point where they think they can go, oh, I'm good. I can stop learning and just work. And that might work out for you just fine. But it also might lead you to a lack of fulfillment and a stagnation of progress. Much like your muscles, if you don't challenge and use your mind, its quality will decline. When you're learning something new, when you get it down, it can be very rewarding. Not to mention just having another skill under your belt. But another big part of learning as a developer is dealing with frustration. I myself have had times where I've gotten frustrated or angry because I couldn't figure something out. I think that's a pretty common thing to come across. But the key is to not let it overwhelm you and not let it make you quit. A friend and former coworker told me this funny little story to help me deal with frustration. She said she once knew a developer who had a frog that he kept at his desk when he worked. And while he coded and developed and worked, he talked to this frog out loud. And although that may seem silly, talking out loud to the frog as he coded allowed him to catch more errors along the way. And this can be a good way to solve a lot of problems. The most important part about learning as a developer, though, is to just not be afraid to ask for help. I think asking for help is something that everybody struggles with. But remember, every developer that you would consider good or a code wizard or whatever, they were all in the same boat as you once, brand new. In summary, software development is still a good field to get into because of all the possibility of remote work out there. There are many tools to do the same thing. You need to have people skills as well as tech skills. And you shouldn't be afraid to ask for help. I think that about sums it up. Thank you guys for watching. I hope this was helpful or interesting to you, and if it was, go ahead and give me a like and a subscribe. I will be posting more tech videos in the near future, so stay tuned. And until next time, guys, peace.